Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is November 19th, 2024. A very auspicious occasion. The day in which Pluto has entered Aquarius, or is entering. I would imagine it's already happened, but it's not too late on the 19th, so whenever that gets to be, consider it done. We are culminating and bringing closure to a 15-year cycle as we cross over into something fresh and altogether new. And hopefully it's all good things for you, and that you find the goodness in it all, whatever it is. But definitely God bless and Godspeed to all that are just advancing in some way, shape, and form in their lives, or transforming in others. Congratulations. Congratulations. I wish you all the best. So let's see what we got here today. Okay, Devil card out the gate, like a stronghold right here. Don't have a congratulations in their repertoire, because it's no celebratory matter to see divine beings be liberated and exalted or advanced in spirit or in truth. And certainly there's both of those frequencies going on. It's not just the ideal of liberation and advancement and evolution. It's the actuality of it, the physicality, the materialism of it all. Very three-dimensional. And for many, there's nothing, that will be left to be desired. And that could even be the highest frequency of this, is just like this decadent experience of life, of which, to, I guess, a great degree, you would want to maintain grounding and focusing. Because imagine like going from being quite limited in your life experience to suddenly having access to everything that you could possibly need, want, or desire, on command, just about, or on demand, whichever you resonate with. Certainly there's a great deal of self-control and responsibility that will be imperative as we get used to that new normal. But there's definitely a deep indulgence of sensuality with that experience as well, which of course is why the self-control and balance is necessary. But it could even be that, we're going to see in a minute, but in the highest frequency, it could be, really just being super saturated in the sensations of the carnal experience, not necessarily in a diabolical sense, but certainly susceptible to it. It's like being fully immersed in pleasure, but in this case, in the highest frequency, I'll say, justifiably so, justly, righteously even, not just, for indulgence sake per se, but even with purpose behind the indulgence, which though it sounds strange, there is purpose behind, because up until now, a lot of like spiritual and even religious conditioning would have you to subscribe to this idea of being, of completely depriving the flesh of pleasure, and not indulging your carnality at all, or certainly not serving it. However, it's virtually impossible to live a prosperous human experience, even with a spiritual inflection, under those circumstances. At some point, you'll crash out, trying to be too holy or trying to be too carnal, whichever the case may be. I mean, come on. In the Bible, Jesus drank wine. Jesus had a good time. Jesus believed in enjoying friendship and camaraderie, and having an appetite for life, and still walking in purpose. Like, it's all throughout the theme of the story, and the inflections in his character. So if that can be true, then certainly there's room for satisfaction, even as a spiritual being, especially as a spiritual being having a human experience. But of course, there's always the tendency to be too indulgent, or to tip the scales in an imbalanced way, and veer into a carnality such as addictions and obsessions and possession and things of that sort, even fear, scarcity, poverty, limitation and restriction itself. Sometimes, the projection of it can provoke you to act out in ways that aren't harmonious with your spirit and your flesh. Just the sheer possibility of being without, can sometimes provoke that. But let's see what's going on here. Okay, so we got the devil. We got the devil card, but then we got okay. So then we have the hermit, which is again about that deep dive, that introspection, being guided. And here is the tendency to be overindulgent, and this could even be the inner conflict of the man to, like, this is good, and this is what has ultimately culminated big time in maybe someone having being completely transformed, being reborn in some way, or definitely emphasis on the transformation piece here, because this could be the inner conflict of that impure indulgence here, that would be seeking inwardly to find a solution, to find a balance, to find settlement, settlement with themselves. And also, it's like the Knight of Wands historically is a here for a long time, not for a good time knight. And so that couples almost too perfectly with the devil energy in the lower frequency to kind of be impulsive, provocative, in some cases perverted, and not perverted in the sense like where it's something, offensive per se, but just not a pure passion, certainly not a mature one. It could be something provoked by lust, or again, by all those other densities I talked about: fear, poverty, scarcity, obsession, on and on and on. This energy in the Knight of Wands in its own right, especially with the Five of Wands by its side, could toil with the inner conflict of impulsivity before it has taken account of their own energetic frequency and taken account of it and become aware, and also taken accountability, not just for their actions, but also proactively considering the results and or even consequences of their actions before they actually make them. That is what the hermit energy is about here, like allowing someone to kind of see their impulses in a pure light from the inside out, of course, before they react and respond to them. And that being the grooming process, where someone doesn't have to curb their enthusiasm for the enjoyment of life, as the Knight of Wands loves to have a good time, but they also don't have to be completely consumed by those lusts and those wild ambitions either. There's some maturity and balance that is being achieved here, so it doesn't extinguish the passion of the man and the soul of the man, and what makes them, like what makes them charismatic, and what makes them a joy to be around, exciting, intriguing, and all of that good stuff, even unto themselves. But it puts them in a position to be much more safe and wise. Yeah, this Hermit card is like wisdom behind the actions. It's literally like the pause for the cause for the pause, or the pause for the cause, to really consider, like, is this worth it? It might feel good right now. It might, look good to engage, but what happens, like what's the domino effect, or what's the outcome or the other side of this experience? Is it something that I wish to create, because the Knight of Wands is also creative, or is it just temporary? And to me, it's giving someone that's more thoughtful of the long term, or at least looking in that direction, which is a great start, if nothing else, for someone to be more conscious of their actions before they do it, so that you don't have to do so much damage control, or cleanup, or you don't have to be so reactive and responsive to the things that have occurred, or things that you've created that you wish you rather not have. You know what I mean? It becomes easy to look at a thing like, yeah, that probably would have been fun at a time, or back in the day, or at this point, or hell, might have even been fun right now, but what comes along with it, what's attached to it, here it is, this conflict that's attached to being compulsive or impulsive, is not what's up, is not worth it, usually, in this case. And I love that it's somebody that is putting an end. That could be the culmination here, even, as I spoke in the beginning. Here it is with the World card, bringing a cycle to a close of someone maybe kind of sowing their wild oats, respectfully, rightfully. Everybody has to have that moment of time, masculine and feminine, in whatever way it makes sense for you. It might not, because this definitely can imply a great deal of, sensual, maybe even sexual energy, but it doesn't have to be exclusive to that. And everybody has their, like, it could be something where you just used to eat McDonald's every day, you know, like something simple like that, or, you know, you drank a lot, you know, and say in college, you partied more, and now, you know, that the novelty has pretty much worn off. The excitement behind those experiences don't have the same arousal, or even, you know, maybe it does even have an arousal, but it doesn't have the same, it doesn't captivate the same way that it used to, you know. Yeah, so this could even be that, like literally someone putting an end to some poor choices, habits that have yielded to conflict, addictions, lustful desires, and maybe not putting an end to it altogether, but certainly putting all things into perspective. You know, as I was saying before, like knowing when to fully indulge and engage, and knowing when to set yourself apart, you know, and resist or decline, or dismiss yourself even from an experience. You know, like that he's leaving, moving away from the Five of Wands, where you could even still have another closure could be leaving places and spaces and acquaintances that are still very much so on the vibe that once upon a time you were on, you know, without hesitation. But it just doesn't hit the same anymore. So some part of that maturation, closure, and reawakening, transformation, it can also be separation, where you're realizing that part of the temptation is may even be in the company that you keep, or in the places that you are engaging or dwelling in. It's really someone taking a step in an enlightened, onto an enlightened path, from internal introspection, being honest with themselves, taking non-judgmental and unbiased review, inventory of their life experiences up to a point, you know, what it has actually yielded realistically, and activating some response to that reality, or activating themselves in response to like a creation or cultivation of the ideal reality. There it is. It's like taking everything that you can see, everything that you've experienced, everything you've learned, all the lessons, because that's one thing about it. The Knight of Wands going to have some lessons, going to have some stories to tell, going to have some I remember when, or back in the day type of experiences that, like I said, is not all bad, because your experiences are how you gauge your standards and your limitations and your boundaries, how you establish your boundaries, and even how you begin to project the reality that you actually want to live in. How would you know what that gets to be without any point of reference, particularly of the things that you probably don't want it to be, or that you would want less of? So it's like you can have all the experience in the world, but I love that the Hermit here is an inflection that someone has learned a lot. They've done a lot. They've done a lot, but they've also learned a lot. And that is the key. They've learned enough to know what is worth continuing, and what is, what is time to kind of put to rest, or to be transformed from. And that's beautiful. I think that that's amazing. That's like literally a full circle moment for someone, for a lot of people, perhaps. And it may have been happening as the hermit is, kind of like a secretive energy or just something that kind of happens behind closed doors. It either could be that somebody's kind of been transforming under their own nose without fully recognizing themselves. It's just kind of been happening without taking full inventory of all the particulars, which I think a lot of us can kind of account for in some interesting way, where you didn't even realize how much you've changed from who you used to be, or who you would, or even from from who other people know you, or how other people know you. You might not have really even recognized how different you've become until over, I would say, maybe the past 6 months or so, maybe. Certainly over the past year in reflection, but right up and close and personal, like look in the mirror and you see something different, or you observe yourself being different, probably not that long, really, for most. So it's probably been a bit of a surprise element to yourself as to maybe even the level of self-control, or I hate to say self-control, but more or less kind of like temperance you have cultivated within yourself, responsibility that you have cultivated, where you could have been in front of a temptation of a certain nature and easily given in, like without a second thought. It almost just feels like natural, like of course I would like to ... And now it's just like you don't even have the taste, really, like you don't really have the urge. You're not, again, so aroused by it. It doesn't pique your interest. It doesn't do it for you, whatever it is. I'll say, I've said this before, but like weed used to be, when I really think about it, over the past 10 years or more, it was about 10 years. Yeah, let's see. When did I move to New York? Because moving to New York really shifted a lot for me. I started in so many ways, but that's another story for another day. But New York, there was just like a culture of smokers, and I kind of went from being very casual and social of a smoker to literally being habitual, on my own. Before, I would only smoke with other people, and then eventually I had my own stash, and it was very necessary to say the least. And now, I haven't been smoking for over a year and a half, that I just kind of quit cold turkey again after picking it up a year before that, indulging a little bit here and there again, but I had quit before that and then fell back into it. But then this, a year and a half ago plus, I stopped again. And this time around, it's been, like I always like to say, disclaimer, I can't say I'll never blow it down ever again, but I will say, like, I've had encounters where I smell it, or it's offered to me, or I'm in the environment where it's very easy to get. There's literally a dispensary. When I stopped, a dispensary opened up in my neighborhood in walking distance. Like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, for real, if there was any temptation still left in me, it would have been quenched by now. It could have been, anyway. So that's just an example for me of something that was very much so a lifestyle, a habit, a lust even at times over the past 10 years at least, that on and off, you know, taking breaks here and there, but for the most part, pretty consistent. That to have a bit of a liberation from the indulgence and from the temptation now, to the point where I don't desire it. I don't even really think about it. And when I do encounter it, it doesn't make me want to have it. You know what I mean? Sometimes it really stinks to me. Sometimes, whereas before, on breaks, it actually would kind of smell a little bit good. Like, that smells good. But now, maybe it's just the type of weed that I've been around, but it doesn't, it's not sensational to me as much anymore. So that's just like a small, you know, just to put myself in the mix, so you know I ain't just preaching or judging, because I know very well firsthand how temptation can be, you know. But in a very practical sense, whatever it is, it's like bringing closure to it, and actually feeling quite accomplished by the achievement that you've made, the growth that you have gained, and how you have evolved throughout that process, and really counting it all necessary in some way, shape, or form, as I said, to kind of test your limits, know your limits, and establish a firm foundation for yourself. So that, I mean, it could have been, thank God, it's never been anything heavier than weed, you know, for me, but it very much so is a gateway drug, you know, and you very much so can find yourself chasing a higher high, or coupling that dependency with others, like drinking, you know, just that naturally go together, which I also never really did. So it's like you kind of have to be celebratory in some sense, that for all the experience that you did encounter and did engage, you still were able to kind of keep your head above water, above the fray. Here's that fray again. This Five of Wands has been coming up a lot. But you still, it could even be energies that would want to draw you back into the fray, like to, like I said, having where you need to disconnect yourself from people, spaces, places, in relationships perhaps, that tempt you to do things that you really don't want to do, you know, or put you in the mindset or the energy of a temptation that you've already more or less evolved from. You know, that's what you get to do that for yourself, to protect your best interest with no apologies. But certainly for whatever it is that you've done for yourself in your own right, at your own expense, is something worth celebrating, it because it's a transformative moment. That's what it's all been about throughout this last 10, 15, 20 years or so. How much have you grown? How much have you changed? Of which you, again, probably haven't recognized, but now would be a good point of reflection to consider what who you are now versus who you were just a decade ago, which in the grand scheme of things is really not that long. My son is just turning 9. Most of that time I was being a mom and still balancing habits and you know, toxic mindsets at times, or at least projections, more or less, you know. So it's a good point to really pat yourself on the back, I would say. To congratulate yourself. Yeah, here's that holding on, but it also could be a conservatism, or a stability again, like kind of grounding yourself in, as I was saying before, like pleasure and temperance, or abstinence. I don't know. I don't know what the adverse of that would be. I'm not really sure about the Four of Pentacles under the Devil, though. It feels a little bit more obsessive and maybe even obsessively controlling, I would say. What's on the bottom? With the Page of Cups, which is a bit of a vulnerable energy and even a bit sensitive and impressionable, I would say. But it could, it could be I don't know. Let me get one on that. I'm not really sure. I don't want to give it a negative light if it isn't. But I'm not sure that it's a positive one, not gonna lie. Is that upright? I think so. Yeah. Now we got the Hierophant. What's at the bottom? Yes. I think it's somebody that's still kind of straddling the fence because they're still delicate or impressionable to the ways of society, maybe even still struggling to abstain from their addictions or from dependencies of whatever sort. It could even be a dependency on society itself, for validation or for security or acceptance. It doesn't even have to be substance. It literally could be that, because with the Four of Pentacles, it's like that's why I was saying, like, I don't know if that's real. I was trying to juice it up, but it feels like somebody that's still holding on to something as if they need it. And I mean, not for nothing, sometimes the pentacles, when I'm talking about substance dependencies, can look like pills, so, but of course it also is money, it's energy, it's something tangible. And connected to the Hierophant, it could also, again, be recognition, it could be acceptance, agreeableness, something like that, something about being agreeable, popularity. It literally could even be a job, like the Hierophant could be a boss or some type of organization, or association, that almost feels a bit exclusive, so there could be some that are still straddling the fence of their acceptance in places, again, that provoke deviant behaviors that they definitely feel a disconnect from, but somehow still feel an allegiance to, whether it be for the opportunity that it yields or the sense of security that it projects, whatever it is, it doesn't really give balance at its finest. But this is the Ten of Wands, which should be the end. But then again, as we're talking about endings, like, some people are definitely ending a cycle, but still beginning almost all over again, kind of finding themselves on the outside looking in of spaces that have been problematic, of which they've, either created or contributed to, but not really being sure about how to navigate that terrain outside of that acceptance. It's like the thing doesn't exist anymore, or doesn't exist in the way that there was a dependency for security on. But it's like, now what? You know what I mean? Now what do I do? Where maybe it is a society or a job or a coven or a camaraderie that someone was kind of used to having a certain sense of acceptance and security in, that in this day and age is being dismantled if it's not pure. You know, now there's conflict here with the Five of Wands. Cycles are closing on everything that, I mean, everything in the past 10 to 15 years. So if it doesn't have the sustenance or substance to stand the test of a transformation, you know, into a new expression of world order, is more or less, you know, either depreciated greatly in the value that it was, if not completely dismantled altogether. And that's kind of what yesterday's message was speaking to, about that choice that many are facing now as to how to move forward. You know, like, are you still grabbing for straws from the past that don't even really exist anymore? Are you too afraid to move forward into the unknown and what is, you know, open-ended more or less with no guarantees per se? Or are you kind of going to stay stuck in the middle, you know, resisting one way or the other? And that's what it feels like here. Like somebody's just trying to hold on to the remnants of what they have left of the previous season, maybe for fear of not knowing what can be obtained moving forward, given there's some ambiguity about what forward even looks like. And also perhaps with some projection of some upheaval in that transformation that, you know, would ultimately compel someone to feel like, I got to hold on to everything I got now, you know, every little crumb, every little coin, because I don't know when I'm going to get more and I don't know how much I'm going to need for the journey. And in this case, again, it could be energy, it could be time, it could be attention, and certainly money. Certainly money, or what little bit of clout you had or power that you had at a time, like still clinging to that influence, all of that, you know. But again, like everything, this is the 10. Whatever has been more or less a burden is now at a point of conclusion where some things are just going to drop, you know, because they have no more life. You know what I mean? Like there's no more vitality to carry it. And if you're still trying to cling to that thing, you may feel the residual effects of its ultimate demise, you know. So let's see what else we got though. And I gotta say, like, you know, I was about to say, this is good, because I try to keep it as practical as possible, but I will say that a lot of the societies or powerful influences that are still keeping up the facade, you know, still holding the torch, literally with the Hermit card here, to illuminate some semblance of power and influence and authority, don't really have any. It's just an illusion. And it's like a last-ditch effort to maintain relevance for fear of having absolutely none. You know, once it's all said and done and you have to actually be measured by your own merit, you know, not somebody else's, not what you can control of others or project onto others or extract from others. Like when it actually has to be pure from your own loins, you know, masculine or feminine, that is the moment of truth, of which none can escape. I mean, no one. So a lot of folks that are still keeping up this facade of power and influence over others, that are too afraid to call their bluff, you know, like that can still be intimidated, that's the last trick they have in the bag, you know, to still be able to hold on to someone else's power by way of their fears and anxieties and dependencies and lusts, because that might be their only source of substance at all, or sustenance or resource at all for energy. And even dark forces themselves, you know, principalities, so to speak, and the energies that, you know, are more mystical and intangible, are only projecting illusions at this point. I mean, perhaps they always were, but if there was ever any true power and authority, even in the earth realm, is virtually it's limited by their own limitations now, where it can only be wielded onto those that believe in it, you know, and those that surrender and submit to it as a truth. It's like somebody telling you that, you know, if you don't, like blackmail, let's say, like if you don't yield to my demands, I'm going to, I don't feel like blackmail is aggressive enough, but it could be. But basically an energy saying, like, if you don't yield to my demands, if you don't do what I say, or you don't satisfy my what I'm asking for, you're going to pay. I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to destroy your life, or I'm going to, whatever it is that could be the most daunting threat to someone. It's like that being held over people's heads. Or again, even the sheer possibility of being stripped of everything you've acquired from whatever this exchange was. I'm taking it all. Well, the thing of it is, it was going to be stripped anyway. So that's not even a real threat, because if you had any intention, first of all, it's going to be stripped because it's not pure. So whether it's physically stripped or whether the satisfaction of it is stripped is already going to be the case, as opposed to you continuing to submit yourself to this agenda and this stronghold, as what I called it in the beginning, for the semblance of some safety or security, you know, some protection, or to keep something worse from happening. No, the worst thing you could possibly do is to stay surrendered to that energy as if you have no other choice. That's the worst you can do, because how it looks is it was already going to be stripped publicly or privately anyway, because it can't transport through this threshold without disintegrating, because the frequency of this threshold doesn't support it. You know, like it's the energies are not aligned. So if you got something diabolically, you achieve some type of success or material gain, wealth, power, by making casualties of others, or doing something unfair, unlawful, unjust, or aggressive, you know, whatever. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to carry on with you, just because it's not ordained to do so. And the more you try to hold on to it, the more you're really just holding on to yourself in a dimension, in a space that has free reign to continue to elude you, just simply because you're still in that territory, like you're still in its occupation. But it's like the moment you say, like, man, F that, like, I don't care, I'm not doing what you say, I'm not gonna, even it could even be like against addictions, like you how your body sometimes can tell you that you need it, you know what I mean, or you need it to stay calm, or you need it to, in some cases with the pills and stuff, your physical being has, a reaction, unfortunately. But the moment that you buck against that and decide, like, I know it might feel like I need it now, or this is my fulfillment in some way now, satisfaction now, I know that the future, it's not sustainable for the long term or for the future. And that's what I'm more fixated on at this point. So if I got to take the hit now to actually like detox, or get some type of support services, rehab, whatever the case may be, like completely filter this energy from my force field, whatever it may be, I'll do that so that I can have a greater promise ahead of me, because it doesn't exist one or the other. And it's like that same thing that was lying to you, telling you, no, you have to have this or you're going to die, or you have to do this or it's over for you, suddenly dissipates into thin air, more or less, even if it peeks its head up every now and again. Like I said, I smell weed here and there, but it doesn't mean I want it, but you ultimately gain your strength in realizing that it does not really have the power and the hold over you that it projects the illusion to have. It almost can't even literally physically manhandle you unless you assist. You know what I mean? So in another sense, like, if it's not substance, literally these societies that people have pledged themselves to or found themselves entangled in are sometimes holding a threat of like exposure, or stripping them of titles or money, or again camaraderie, inclusion, whatever. And you feel like this power has everything, has all the cards in their hand. When it comes down to it, if you were to buck against that system and go in a different direction, 9 times out of 10, there wouldn't be as much power to exert over you, because they're just as much entangled in whatever they're projecting onto you as you are with it. It's like, I'm going to tell everybody, well, how you there too, you know what I mean? Like, how are you so knowledgeable of this experience or encounter or this information, if not to be for being a witness, So it kind of works to call the bluff of these strongholds when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, because you'll realize that it's not what it appears to be. And even again, to take it deeper, these energies that have pledged themselves to even darker forces, summoning demons and dark lords and deities and things of that nature, those energies aren't even, the facade is that, and I channeled this before on my own, but I never really got a chance to talk about it. The facade is that the ones that are presenting themselves to kind of be backed by those forces don't even have the support of those forces anymore. It's like everybody is detaching, because these energies don't even have the power that they project anymore. Not in the ways that maybe they once have, or the illusion that they've been able to cast successfully. So now they're even being the way that they're hovering over, these power positions. to still gain and extract as much compliance and sacrifice of them, energetically as they can, is also another layer of the facade. It's just like one demonic pyramid scheme where nobody really is winning, not what is at the so-called top, the so-called bottom. Nobody's really winning because nobody can properly transition into the space and time where the greatest quality of life is existing, where the real substance, the hot commodity really is, like love, light, peace. Like those are the things worth siphoning, like siphoning off of someone who's depressed and distressed and fearful and anxious is not really all that satisfying, which is why it's not sustainable, not for the powers that were and are still presenting themselves to be, and not for the dark forces that they either think they're still aligned with or that they know they're not in alliance with anymore, but it just makes sense to keep projecting as if they are. Like they still have some, like to almost look to appear as though like you have friends in high places, or in this case, dark places and dark spaces that are, greatly feared. And that is like, that's your clout more or less, or that's your, how do you say it? Like that's your like your calling card, so to speak. Like you don't want to mess with them because of what they into, like the Illuminati type of energy, or associations such as that, where it's like, ooh, don't mess with them. But in actuality, they don't have the favor anymore. It was all an illusion anyway, but they don't even have a grip on the favor that they projected themselves to have. So they're only now feeding off of suckers that still are pretty much sacrificing themselves by their own fears. Literally, as I said, assisting in their own captivity, but not because they actually have the power to hold them. They don't. And they're just as guilty as anyone that they would try to entangle at this point. And now we're in a season where everything is bound to be exposed. Wow, look, we got the Eight of Wands. Exactly, like hella backfires, communication, information overload here, passion just firing off left and right. This could literally be provocations and responses and reactions to the insurgence of energy that's coming into the earth as we speak, as I said, of which no one can hide from. It's a surge, and some people are in a space where they they're a conduit for it and then can conduct it appropriately. And for some, it'll be like a circuit flood or something like that. I don't even know. Here we got the Three of Wands, an expectation, and then we got the Four of Cups. Like, yeah, there are some people that are like, bring it on, whatever it is, the upgrade, the new this, the transformation, the evolution, like however, like I said, a lot of what you've been becoming has been kind of undercover even to you. And now it's like, get ready for the big reveal type of thing, like being in a way that you didn't even know you could be, doing things that you didn't even know you could do. And like I said, for some, that can be a great enlivening, and for others it can be an overload. So it just depends on where you are and what you're in expectation for and what you are what source you are still connected to have that energy conduct through you. Because imagine still being connected to like a watery source. Again, like I was saying, like almost it being like a power outage in your force field because of what you're entangled with. Like you aren't even a clear channel to receive what could ultimately be a rejuvenation or regeneration in some way, shape, or form. But because you're still connected to this energy that thinks it's, or projecting that it's still connected to that, just the sheer intention of it all is like a interference on the wire, so to speak. So as you're still holding on to what you thought empowered you before, you're not in a proper position to actually receive what actually will. Four of Cups, completely missing an opportunity here. And that Eight of Wands is like advancement, like accelerated advancement. You not only are you closing cycles, but you're entering a new phase of acceleration, you know, where things don't take so long to materialize anymore. So of course, again, here it is why you have to really be careful about your indulgences, your projections, your inferences, your like everything matters because of the upsurge in power for creativity. Yeah, so even those with bright intentions can still crash out, you know, if not careful or at least mindful, I would say in this case. But that all, you know, that is very much so the gift, you know, minus the curse, is that if you certainly are in alignment and you are focused on creativity for creation's sake, for the greatest good of all, for the most part, you included, and you primarily, first and foremost, you are in luck because you now have the support and the drive and inspiration, literally the power force behind your ambitions, again, that would accelerate this Knight of Wands to a mastery position where you think something and it gets to be, or you have a great idea and a really strong passion for something, and suddenly it's like accelerated beyond your control, or at least beyond what you could have controlled it to be, or beyond your containment, I'll say, not your control, but your containment. Yeah, like, and that's very much so a gift, but to whom much is given, much is required. So everyone hasn't really proven themselves to be trustworthy with that level of power and energy just yet, which is the reason for the recycling of, another season of trial and error for some, but still very much so for all, because as I've said, you could still crash out with all of that at your fingertips and with that resource if you're not careful. You know what I mean? So it's like there's still no exemption here. And like sometimes, yeah, these are the contracts and commitments. Sometimes certainly I'm not wishing this or projecting this, but you could be the crash test dummy, to be like of what it looks like to have that level of power and, kind of falter with it. And I don't wish that for anyone, and I hope it's not true, but it definitely is a possibility. So it's like where I'm speaking of those that may still have some reconditioning to do, perhaps, or some grounding to do to receive that privilege, it's still, you know, like I said, like sometimes you being the first to receive something has its cons as well, because it's something that you've never had before, or something, at least in this lifetime, and it's something to become acquainted with or comfortable with that other people, you know, it's like a problem that other people don't necessarily have per se, as they're still being conditioned or reconditioned. And here you are with all the privilege in the world. You know, just God forbid it doesn't fare well. So I'm saying that to make the ground even, because you know me, and I'm a little bit of a devil's advocate, blame all the Libra energy. But the other side of it is that, yeah, there's a great deal of privilege, and perhaps even, you know, like I said, like a lot of passion and pleasure. Yet again, as I started in the very beginning, very tempting, and really testing your resolve for balance and self-control. And it's like you're on your own with that. It's not a hand holding type of experience per se, you know, because just as much as the degrees of difficulty have elevated in the lower spectrum, they have done so in the higher spectrum too, where there's a greater expectation on your performance now, where it's not just like, oh, well, he's just learning, or he, you know, like, not really, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost, you're expected to perform a certain way, not, or else, you know, you get damned to hell per se, any more than you could create that experience for yourself on earth. But because it's so delicate, it's so sensitive, that it requires a handling with care. And if you don't handle it with care, and i.e. it perhaps even just being yourself with care, you could crash out. You know, here we go with the Two of Cups and the Two of Swords. So 2-2, 22 could be significant. I don't know. I don't usually say things like that, but it could be. The Two of Cups is some agreement or contract, could even be with yourself. Now this could be like I'm saying, like where you've made a covenant with yourself and somehow you go against it. Magician card, like you are empowered to make that choice one way or another. You know, like this is literally that, like having this magnified manifestation force at your fingertips, because you've earned the right to possess it. You have presented yourself to be worthy and trustworthy to project it one way or another. But again, like it could just easily, the switch could easily flip at any moment, and here right under the conflict, you could have an experience that is much less favorable. And I feel like I'm saying this not to cause paranoia or fear, but just so that there is understanding of how precious this privilege really and truly is. Literally precious, like to be managed well. And maybe that's just my perspective, and that could be something that is ever evolving, you know, because it may be some residue of the past of which I still feel like this intense pressure to do right and do well. Like there's room for that evolving for me too. So take what I'm saying as it resonates for you. But I feel like better safe than sorry, you know, and if you can create anything that you, okay, I didn't do that, by mistake for no reason. Like better safe than sorry. And if there's anything that you can put your energy toward to create, let it be in the highest frequency if you can help it. And at this point, most of us have created a great deal with much less support and satisfaction, you know what I mean? And certainly reward. So now having all things culminating in this new season together, I guess it just matters to not get distracted, from the purpose at hand. All right. The purest passion behind your purpose. All right, let's see. We almost out of here. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. I don't know if you even saw that because it flipped out down here. But this was right behind here. And this is the last card. These are the last two. Perfect. This is the pure passion, the truth, and the divine inspiration. It don't get no more pure than that unless we had like the Ace of Cups, but we've been talking a lot about passion and pleasure and inspiration and action and drive and ambition and all of that. And here is the escalation and the elevation. This is the mastery here personified through this human being. That's what someone is tapped into or at least has access to by way of the Ace of Swords, which is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. No shortcuts, no diversions, no manipulations, none of that. Only what it is and what it should be. Being honest with yourself, honest with the divine. Like you can't really go wrong in that regard. So that kind of like makes all of my warnings more or less null and void, or at least takes the sting off of it to make it so, preachy or, I don't know, alarming, I guess. Because what it comes down to is ultimately just maintaining the frequency that you've already proven to be capable of. Like I said, before you even knew what you were doing, the choices that you were making pronounced a certain capability and quality and character and qualifications that were this all along, just in a small package or in a small expression. And now it's just amplified, Wheel of Fortune vibes, greater territory, greater fortune, more favor, more power, more influence, just, more to manage of yourself even. But as long as it's done purely and honorably, there really shouldn't be any cause for alarm. And even when temptation may arise, or when temptation is indulged, hopefully you can always find yourself back on track to what matters most. Yeah, 9 of Wands. Look at that with the King of Wands. Right back on track. This is so good. This is, first of all, the disparity between these two energies is much of what I've been talking about. This is somebody kind of wounded by their experiences and their actions, a little bit in regret, certainly with some paranoia about it all, but still standing, still capable, still able. Willing is the question mark. But the will here with the King of Wands is absolute. Whatever it is that he sees as purposeful to attach his passion to, and this is the maturity here. This is beautiful coming off of the Ace of Wands and the Ace of Swords. It's absolutely the mastery, again, personified and exemplified. And now this could even be reflective of the part of you that maybe didn't really realize how resilient you've been on the so-called battlefield or in these trial and error and tribulatory times, you may not have realized how strong you've proven yourself to be, and now you're getting ready to see. It's almost like him looking at himself in some way as well. Like, wow, that's what I have. I'm capable of that. I have that much power. I can do this, and then it just builds on itself. And of course, again, emphasis on temperance, and responsibility and accountability, because really there's no limitation when you're tapped into divine sources as to what you can accomplish, even in the 3D. Those limitations are being repealed day by day, more and more. And that is what we're all bearing witness to through our own personal expressions. The impossibilities being completely repealed from our previous conditionings. Like what we would have never imagined to be true or possible before is now absolute or becoming so. And the first-hand look at that is right in the mirror. So you wouldn't want to miss this wave if you can catch it. No matter where you are, you can catch it if you have the will to do so. And one thing about it, the King of Wands has the will. And he even has the way. It's just about the confidence and personal security to know that you do, to believe that you do, even against the resistance and the projections of the illusions of those that want to maintain that power influence over what they already know has been liberated, or certainly that's outside of their range of control anymore to be so. So I'm gonna leave that there. Pretty good message. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.